Yeah, I'm hoping there's no questions on the background estimation. So just to summarize, video is nothing but a set of frames. And so in order to get the background, we take only certain frames, random frames, or we can take all the frames also. That would be computationally expensive. And then, so if you consider only the top left pixel, right? Let's say you consider only the top left pixel. Let me just, okay, I'm not able to see the annotation over here. That's fine. Okay, let's say if you consider only the topmost, like the top left pixel, and if you consider for all the frames, right? So chances of all the frames having some movement is very less, and chances of it being a background is like pretty high, right? So that's the whole logic. So you can take either mean of those or either median of those, and then finally get an image out of it. So that would be a background of your video, right? So that's the summary of the background estimation. So now we'll be moving towards building a package out of it. So let's see how that goes. In this case, mean is better or median. So usually median is better because it's not like kind of the outliers are taken care with the medians compared to mean. So if you're taking the mean, you have outliers effect also. So the median is better. Cool. Okay, let me share my screen. And please feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions. Yeah.
So I have some experience with like using Python like a numerical context, but it's mostly been on, the command line, like running it on a server, etc. How well does it play with like version control in like notebooks and stuff, given that, poetry is built around the TOML file, it defines it declaratively, so you can version it and Git and stuff. My understanding last I checked was that there were some purpose-made tools for versioning notebooks. How did the two interact?
I mean, are you specifically asking about the notebooks, or are you like talking in general about the poetry and the version control with notebooks?
The latter.
Yeah, I mean, so for version control, we mainly use Git. So that would be the main tool for the version control. And when it comes to the packaging and stuff, so there is a provision with poetry as well, which we'll be looking into it later. Like you can kind of change the major, minor, and the patch versions through poetry as well when you're publishing to PyPy. So, but for the notebooks, I would say like, I mean, Git would be a better option. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Notebooks always seemed a bit wonky in terms of version, given that they're just blobs of JSON.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. I have usually used like kind of mainly Git for that. I haven't come across any other tool for specifically for notebooks. Okay, so yeah, I'm on a particular branch. So this is not initialized with poetry. So either if you already have a repo, you can initialize that with poetry, or you can create a new one. So in this case, basically we'll start with an existing repo and then initialize that with poetry. So for that one, basically you'll have to kind of use poetry in it. So it's initially asking about what would be the package name. So I'm going with whatever we have, like video background estimation. The version for it, so I'll be going with this particular version itself. Description, we can give some description for the package that we are developing. So we can say background estimation. Yeah, you can kind of give all these details: author, license, let's say compatible Python version. Yeah, so if we know the dependencies while starting itself, so we can add that interactively, or we can just ignore that for now. Yeah, I'm just skipping it. So yeah, so with the given settings, it's basically asking, are you like okay with whatever details that is given? So I'm just saying yes for that. So Py project. Yeah, so you can see the Py project YAML, the configuration file that is created with whatever details that we have kind of provided. So this is like the first step. And so next step would be like enabling the virtual environment for the project that we are working on. So there are like two options with poetry. So you can have the virtual environment inside the project directory itself, or you can have it outside. So my preference is having it inside. So it's kind of helpful. Everything is in a single place and it's easier to manage is what I feel. So for that one, for the virtual environment to be inside the project, you'll just have to use poetry config virtually in project true. We have to set this flag to true. Yeah, hope it's better now. Yeah, let's just look into the structure. Okay, we have this. We'll just create the package directory as well. So it's going to be, I mean, this is the package directory, or this is like kind of a module. So in order to say it's a module, we need to have init.py. Yeah, so now let's start adding the dependencies. So basically, we used OpenCV there, and then kind of TQDM. So basically to see the progress when we're using for loops. So TQDM is not like in the required dependency, but it's kind of good to have. So I'm just adding OpenCV and TQDM as main dependencies. So there are like different ways of doing it. So all the dependencies that are required, that are like kind of installed for the projects that might not be needed for production. So we can group the dependencies. Let's say if I want to test the code or the code formatting, all the packages related to that, that's not needed during production. All right, so we can group those, we can separate it out. So whatever I have installed is like kind of considered for prod dependencies. Whatever I'm like kind of going to group would be under dev dependencies, which will not be installed during the production installation or the packages when having the package, right? So with poetry, we'll have to kind of do something like this. Poetry add group -g is group, and we are saying dev is the group. And for development, I'm adding Matplotlib, Jupyter, Black for formatting, code formatting, PyTest for having unit tests and integration tests, iSort for basically sorting the imports, pre-commit. So that will be useful for like before committing anything, having few automated things. Then finally, like the poetry bump version, so that will be useful for versioning. Yeah, let me quickly go through the chat. Yeah, there's one question. This might have already been answered, but what were the main features that you have found most helpful when it comes to poetry? So one is the configuration file, like having everything in a single configuration file. So that is like the biggest advantage. And the other thing is basically for getting a generating a wheel file, so you need not write any setup.config. So that is like one of the biggest advantage. And yeah, publishing to PyPy is like very easy. So that is one other biggest advantage. And finally, the dependency management. So it's very clean when it comes to poetry compared to pip or any other options that are there. Yeah, Nick had a question. What's the comparison with requirements versioning compared to pip compile plus requirements? I think Asha has already answered that in the chat. Yeah, Vishnu has a question like, how is it used with Docker? So when using with Docker, like currently I'm using inside a Docker container, but like in general for production or any other use cases when using with Docker. So so we need not have a virtual environment. Docker itself is an isolated environment, so we can just have poetry installed and use it for installation and then for packaging any other purposes there. Cool. I'll go ahead with the next steps. So we added all the dependencies that we want. We'll just look into the toml file. So you can see these are the main dependencies, and these are like grouped under dev dependencies. So we'll not be having these things in the main dependencies. So that's one like one advantage of it. So let's move ahead. Yeah, let's for activating the environment. So we'll have to say poetry shell, and we can just come out of the environment saying exit. Yeah, so I've just activated the environment. I'm inside the environment. And so basically, let's add one other dependency that is flake-it. That's mainly for linting. So let's try to add it as it is without mentioning any versions. It's taking the latest version. So you can see like the current project, there is an error message that is coming over here, right? So if it was pip, and let's say if Python was not the problem and other packages were like kind of a problem, it would not care. It would just kind of replace whatever was there earlier with whatever version the placate requires, right? But with poetry, it gives a message saying that, okay, these are the problems that it's facing. So we have to kind of take care of it by choosing the right version. So it's like kind of before installation itself, we are given this hint so that we don't, we don't go into trouble when with packages and versions. So that's mainly taken care by the log file that is created, so pointer log file. So that has all the details of which package, which dependencies are there, which versions are compatible. So all those informations are like information is stored in that log file, and that is used to kind of resolve the dependencies and do these kind of messages. So 6.0.0 is not compatible, so we'll go with the lower version. I'll go with the lower version for now. Yeah, so we have this installed. So now let's start adding the code. I'll go into the details of the code. So we'll focus mainly on the package. I mean, package creation, code management, and kind of automation. So just a second. Okay, I'll have to go inside this particular directory and then I'll create a class called estimate background. Yeah, I'm just copy pasting the code that I had in the GitHub repository main branch. So this is a different branch. And so like whatever we saw in the notebook, right? The same stuff is over here, just like we have a class, and then we have like different ways to estimate the background, and selecting frames is like kind of separated out. And then finally cleaning up, so we are reading the videos using the video reader from CV to OpenCV. So we're just really cleaning up those things. And so basically we'll be calling the get background method with, let's say, median or mean. So as the different options for estimating the background. So based on that, the background will be estimated and kind of returned. So that is the gist of this particular class. Yeah, so we'll call this from outside. Let's see, we'll call it as run.py, and we'll be utilizing the package and then trying to see if things are running as expected. Yeah, so I have a video file that I was showing previously, and then frame fractions, it's basically like given a video file, how many frames, like 1% of the frames to consider or 10% of the frames randomly to consider for background estimations. That is what is happening here, and then basically storing the results, background in the results directory. Let's see if everything is fine. This should be running. Yeah, so this is running fine, and we should be having, okay, we don't have results. Yeah, so we have the results in the background, like the background in the results folder. So now let's move on the configuration file. Like what else can we add to the configuration file based on the dev dependencies that we have added? So let's move on to that. Yeah, so I'll be adding configurations for ISORT, black, all those things that we added for during the dev dependencies. So this is mainly for isort. Let's say for importing, instead of having it in all separate lines, we can have it in a single line and multiple packages imported. So those things, and then talking about what should be the line length for imports. It can't exceed 150. So if it's exceeding 150, then it's like kind of taken care in the next line. So those kind of things of isort. So you can see more configurations here. I've just added it as a comment, and then coming to black, like what is the line length of the code, right? So, and then on the tests, so we'll be having unit tests and integration tests in the tests folder, that is through PyTests. So these configurations are like kind of added in the Py project atomic file itself. So yeah, so now let's add on the linting. So I'll be having a .flakeit file. This is for the linting, and so linting is basically trying to see if the code is like kind of following the standards, step standards. So same thing, like, I mean, we can have the max length restrictions, max complexity, like if there are a lot of if else statements inside a function. So based on that, I mean, we can calculate the complexity, and if the complexity is like above 10, then we can flag that out. So, and we can ignore a few warnings or errors that is coming. So basically the warnings, we can ignore those. So we can specify which all warnings we want to ignore, and is there any particular file that we want to kind of ignore a particular warning? So that can also be kind of quoted over here in this configuration file. So yeah, so this was for the linting. So we'll later see like how we can kind of automate these things with a single make file, and then kind of with the pre-commit hooks. So we need not be doing anything manually. So we'll be seeing it soon. Yeah. So next thing is, so given all this configuration in place, let me just quickly check on the structure that we have. So we have videos, log file, toml file. Cool. I'll just make a directory for tests. Yeah, I've added very basic tests over here just to kind of show the functionalities and not worrying about like the actual tests, how they are written. So I have a very basic test. So basically initializing the background estimator, and then instantiating it, and then kind of trying to see if the videos are like kind of readed in a proper way, so that we have total number of frames greater than 0. That means we have read we have the details of the video like in a proper fashion. And then this is like kind of a integration test, I can say. Like we have there are like multiple functionalities. So one is kind of trying to get random frames from the video. That is one functionality. And then these frames are given to estimate the background. So that is a totally different functionality. So kind of clubbing these two together, there is a single test over here. So trying to see if the background image that is returned, so is it of a RGB or a grayscale, right? So if it's not 3, then that means it's returning something that is not RGB, so not returning a RGB image. So there are like assert statements, and also trying to check if whatever is returned is like a numpy array or not. So these are like very basic checks over here. the intent here is to show the functionalities and not to go into deep of what unit testing is, what integration testing is, right? And other important thing is like all these tests, so it has to be like kind of starting with the test keyword. So even the functions and the class, so those are like starting with the test keyword. So if everything is working fine, then we should be able to kind of run the test, poetry and PyTest, or you can just, oops, there's something wrong. Okay, did I miss anything? Yep, this is imported background estimation and test number of frames. I guess it might be something to do with, let me just quickly check this. Yeah, I mean, well, I'll just go to the questions in the chat. Was Docker images or Docker? I think I answered that. Yeah, the version syntax. So it's basically, I think it's at least Python 3.8. I think that is what it means. I'm not very sure on that. It might be like it's either 3. Exact 3.8 or at least starting at least 3.8. Cool. Video background estimation, and then yeah, okay. It was not able to like kind of find that video background as a module. So because of that, it was failing the test. I mean, the inputs were not working right. But yeah, so we have it in place. So we had like 2 tests, and it says 2 tests are like kind of passed. So let's see like how we can run the other stuff, placate, linting. So for the linting, we'll have to specify the config file like the flakate, poetry run flakate, and we have to specify like which directory or which particular Python file we want the linting results on. So it says blank line at the end of file. So this is one warning that we got. So we can fix it by code formatting. So we can use poetry run black on whichever Python file or folder that we want. Yeah, it says this particular file is like kind of reformatted. And if we run back the flakate, we should not be seeing that error or the warning. And finally, we can use isort for sorting the imports. Yeah, so there was one fix that was made fixing this particular file in the test. So isort is basically like kind of sorting based on the system level libraries already or the modules based on what we have imported, right? So it's like kind of reordering them, and if there are multiple lines imports, then it's like kind of getting them to a single line. So Yeah. So we were running all these things separately. Yeah. So we'll have everything in place with the help of make files. So let me open this. Yeah, I'm copy pasting a few lines over here. So project source, we are seeing video background estimation. And so this is basically, we are seeing that. So usually make files are like kind of referring to the physical file in the system. So instead of, so it usually looks for those things. So this first command says that, okay, we can have few commands like help and install, which are not actually files, and we can kind of execute them. So that is what is taken care in the first line. And then the project source is video background install. So here, let's say I have all the like dependencies in the PyProject toml file. So now if I'm like kind of cloning the project and then trying to install, so one can just use like make install, uh, use this like instead of going through all these commands one by one, and formatting, linting, isort. So basically kind of taken care with these poetry run commands in the make file. And then finally testing. So poetry run pytest. So that is also like taken care. And finally, we have help to see what each of these commands do. And finally, all, like this is running all the commands that we have. So let's see in action. So now if I do make test, so it's running a unit and integration test. So if I say make isort, so it's nothing to sort over there because it's we already sorted that. So yeah, and other was like the make all, so we can just run everything whatever we need here with this. Yeah. So one last thing would be having a pre commit config, so that before pushing anything to Git remote, all these checks are made so that code is clean, and it's the we have passed all the linting warnings, like we don't have any of those, and we are making sure that whatever unit tests and integration tests are there, that is also like kind of passed, right? So do let's edit the pre commit config file. So yeah. Yeah, so there are like referring to this particular repo, there are like predefined hooks, checking if the Python file is like as expected or not, like passable or not. So then trying to see if we are merging the branches, or if we are doing trying to see if there is a merge conflict or not. So before pushing anything to a particular branch, so end of file fixes and trying to see if there is any file which is like of a larger size being added to the GitHub remote repository. And then, so we are seeing that it's referring to a local setting that we have instead of a repo that is online. So we are seeing that we'll have to kind of refer to the make all command that we had before committing anything. So the make all command entry is the make, and that is a command, and the argument that is given is all. So this command would be executed. So these two things would be happening before making the commit. So this is on the pre-commit. So when working in like larger groups, this becomes very handy, like manually formatting and all those things that I mentioned, right? Making sure all the tests are running, all the functionalities are running as expected. So that becomes very difficult when working with larger groups. So having these things automated is like kind of very helpful in this setting. Yeah, I think we already had pre-commit. No, we didn't had pre-commit installed. So what was the command for? Oh, it's already installed. Okay, so now let's see git status, git branch. Yeah, so we are on this. Yeah, I'm adding all the files now. Git commit -m. Hopefully it triggers. Yeah, it triggered. So the pre-commit hook is kind of triggered, and it's checking for all this whatever checks that we had in the pre-commit config, right? So these were referring to a particular repo, the hooks, and this was the local checks. So all the local checks have like kind of passed, but we have some issue with end of files. So we can do git status and kind of see what got changed. So there are like a lot of blank space over here that got removed. So end of file is like kind of automatically fixed. So we need not worry about that. So we'll just have to kind of add these changes. Yeah, and so basically the previous commit didn't happen. So if you look into, I mean, these are for other branches that I have, that other, yeah, formatting and linting. Yeah, I'd created, I mean, this branch out of a different branch. So it was showing for those things. No need to worry on this. Yeah, so basically the previous commit was not completed. So we'll have to commit it back. Commit. Yeah, so now the commit has like kind of finished, and all the checks that were there, so those were like kind of automatically taken. So let's do git push. Oops. Yeah, so the new branch is created, and so it was there locally, and it's reflected in the remote as well now. So let's say I imported something, and let's take another example. Import numpy. I'm hoping, let's say, just for demo purpose. Now git status modified is this. Yep, let's say I'm adding this. Temporary commit. Yeah, so now like I imported request, but it's not used. So basically this is like kind of flagging it out and not allowing us to commit. So this is like automatically happening, right? So because we have configured the pre-commit hooks, and all the checks like the linting, everything is in place with the local checks. So yeah, so we'll just revert that back. That's already okay. It's sorted as well. So that you can see like isort with isort, we have this sorted. So git status, modify, I don't want these changes. So yeah. Yeah, so we have like kind of added whatever functionalities that we needed. We have the automation in place before pushing anything to remote. And then what else? Yeah, so now let's try to kind of get the wheel files. So wheel files are nothing but the installation files, which have all the dependencies and all the meta related to this particular uh, package. So with Poetry, it's very easy. We need not go and write the setup.cfg file. So we just have to say Poetry build. So you can see there is a dist folder that got created, and the wheel files and the code files. So those are in place here based on the version that we have in the pyproject.toml. So that is one biggest advantage with Poetry. Yeah, so whatever version was like kind of mentioned over here, so that is taken care, and wheel file is like kind of created. Yeah, and we added bump version to kind of change the versions over here. So so with Poetry, we can just use, let's say I'm just doing it for a dry run so that it's not changing anything in the Tamil file. So if I want to change from the existing version to a major version, so I mean, the major version was 0. So if I'm saying Poetry version major, the leftmost one is like kind of incremented. And minor is the middle one. So 0.1 to 0.2, and then the patch is the last one. So yeah, this is the patch one. So this was a dry run. So let me quickly status. I think let me just go to the main before like kind of creating the wheel files. Yeah, hopefully things are fine over here. Cat pyproject.toml. Yeah, so we have like 0.1.1. Let me stop sharing the screen once and just a second. Yeah, can you guys see the screen? Okay, so let me just quickly refresh this. Yeah, so we had a different branch that was created with whatever we did, whatever changes that we did. So that is this particular branch, and in the main branch we have all the updated details, and even the PyProject YAML has all the details that needs to be there in the PyPy page. So like the keywords repository. So if someone is trying to search for your package that you have published, so basically they can just use the keywords and then kind of reach to this particular package. So version is 0.1.1. So Yeah, looks like whatever changes I had done previously, it's not like kind of reflected in the repo. Yeah, so maybe we'll, for the demo purpose, I'll just increment to 0.1.4. Yeah, it's saying init is not found. We have an init file there. Not sure why it's saying that. Let's see, poetry. Yeah, so in order to publish, there's one other step. So you can go through this blog, I can share the link later. So what you'll have to do is like kind of create an account in PyPy. So create an account, then we have to enable token authentication for PyPy. So then, so you'll be getting a token for, let's say, you can just give the name to the API token and then get the token. So, so once you get the token, so I have already done it offline. So I'm just talking through the steps. So what you'll have to do is you have to run this command poetry config pypy token.pypy and then your actual API token. So you'll have to kind of run this command. So once that is done, then you'll have to come here and then say poetry build. Yeah, so you'll be having the wheel file and the code, like whatever the code that we had for this particular package under this particular version. And then finally, you'll have to say poetry publish. Yeah, so we have 0.1.4. So if we come here, yeah, so you should be able to see the latest version. And so that is also like kind of reflected here, right, to the latest version. And yeah, so now let's go back to the notebook file and then try to install this particular package and then try to get the background. Right. So here I had done it for 0.1.2. Let me do it for, let me just remove this. It's taking the latest version. Oh, it's okay. It's telling me. Maybe it's cached. Oops. Okay. There's no space. Oh, I'm missing the quotes. Yeah. Yeah. It has taken 0.1.4, the latest one. And so let's try to kind of estimate the background using the package now. So we don't have anything on this over here, like apart from the package. Right, so we haven't imported anything related to the background estimation. So it's just whatever is related to the package now. And so here I'm seeing 10% of the frames and then passing this particular video file that I've uploaded here on the left side and using median to estimate the background. Yeah. So plot.m show. Yeah, this is the background that we got. So instead of median, if we want to calculate the mean, maybe with 5% of the frames. So let's see. I mean, since mean is like kind of not robust to outliers. So even if there is like a few vehicle movement, then it's like kind of affected, and so you can see some patches in the middle of the road. Yeah, I can see the patches compared to like the median one. So yeah, this was a simple way of like calculating the background and with the package in PyPy. And yeah, this is what we wrote, like whatever is there. So I don't have any like doc strings and all in place. Just have a skeleton over there. But as a good practice, I would recommend having like the module doc strings, class doc strings, and even for functions in a very detailed fashion, adhering to NumPy standards or like, I mean, there are like different standards in Python. Basically, we can follow any of those and have it in place. So this is just a demonstration of how we can have a package with poetry and how we can automate few things using poetry and other functionalities so that we need not do it manually when working in a larger groups. Right. So yeah, that was it. Let's see. Yeah. So whatever we had in the README, so that is also reflected over here, the project description and the library details. In the release history, we have like 3 versions that were created, and yeah, the repo, like whatever the meta information that we gave in the PyProject .toml, so that is like kind of visible here, and we can go to the repository as well from the PyPy page. Yeah, I don't have anything else. So yeah, I'll be happy to answer if there's any other questions. Hope it was not like going through a lot of material in a short time. So I hope like at least you guys were able to get the gist of using poetry and then like getting a package out of it and having it in PyPy.